Okay, so we're going to go over the async and await for promises. So the async and await are a special syntax to work with promises in a more comfortable kind of fashion. So the async keyword, it can be placed before a function, and this means that the function will always return a promise. So even if we return just a simple string or a number, it will actually return that as a promise using the promise.resolve. So an example here would be, so say we have async with our keyword, function get data, and what we're going to do is we're going to return just the number 1 here. So you see that we've got our async keyword. And what we're going to do here is we're going to call get data. We're going to remember that it's a promise, so that we have to add our .then, our response equals to our console.log success. Put our response value here. So now when we call our async function, we know it's going to be a promise that's going to be returned. So we handle that with our handler, our then handler, and then we're going to do a log out of the response value that we get back. So we're going to expect 1 here, so success 1 to be printed out. Node. Okay, great. So this is, as I mentioned, it is always going to be returning a promise. So even though we're returning a number here, it is actually the same as if we did promise.resolve and put in 1 there. So you see this will actually print out the exact same, success 1. Okay, so the next keyword is await, and that can only be used within a function that has the async keyword. So what await does is it gets JavaScript to wait for the promise to settle, whether that be a resolve or reject, before it moves on to the next line. Now it doesn't stop the JavaScript engine completely. The JavaScript engine can still load files, it can still handle events, but it just waits on the exact line, on the exact promise to settle before it moves on to the next step. So what I'll do here is I'm going to change this to be a new promise. I'm just going to have a basic one in here with a set timeout. So, and we're going to do a resolve returned with just say the number 1. Okay, and we're going to wait for 1 second on this. Okay, so what we want to do is, with this, we can, I suppose, way would be to do a .then. So since we want to use our await, we don't actually have to use that there, or don't have to follow that syntax. What we can do is we can declare it as a const, my promise response equals, and then add in the await keyword. So that's the most important piece right there. And then what we'll do is we'll add in our console.log here, and we're going to do and we're going to add in our my promise response. So that means also that down here we can actually get rid of our .then listener, or the then handler. So what we're going to expect to happen is that when we call our async function, it's going to come in here, it's going to see the await, it's going to fire off the promise, it's going to wait for that promise to settle. So for us it's going to take about a second. The response value of 1 will be sent into this variable here, the my promise response, and then the console.log statement will be printed out. So we'll have promise awaited number 1. Great. So the next one to see here would be what happens if there is a reject. So to handle the errors, we need a try catch. We need to surround the await with a try catch to handle any errors that are thrown. So we're going to do a error and we're going to have just the error text value there. So I'm just going to change this to be a reject. So now what's going to happen is that after a second, the promise will reject at this exact line. So the console.log down here with the promise awaited will not be hit. It will move into the catch here for error, and it will do a console.error of the error occurred with the number 1. Okay, so great. So you can see that happened there. So one of the benefits of using async and await is if we want to do multiple promise calls, so that are depending on each other. Say there's some information that we want to pass from one to the other. So say if we have a second call here, so let's call it my promise 2. Change both to be resolve for now. So say we have my promise 1, it's going to return, and my promise 2, we're going to return the number 2. So what will happen here is this will be fired off. It waits for the promise to settle. Only at that point then will it move on to the second promise call, and then it will wait for that to settle as well. Then down here what we can do is we can just to showcase we're waiting on both values, we can just do a simple sum, and now we'll be able to see that after 1 second, after 2 seconds, we then have promise awaited printed out with the sum of 1 plus 2, which should be 3. So we should see that printed out now. Great, so we see a promise awaited number 3. Another way to use await is also with the promise.all static method. So what we could even do is convert these into an await. Sorry, convert them into a promise.all. So we would do constant my data equals await promise.all, pass our array in there, and what I'll do is I'm going to move these values into this array, and the second one, and that means I can remove those 2 values, and I'm just going to simply print out my data here. Okay, so now what you'll see is it will wait for both of these promises to resolve, and then we should get an array of 1 and 2. There you go, see promise awaited 1, 2. So that is async await for promises.